Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast, or are you listening to the Get Up in the Cool podcast? It's going to be somewhat ambiguous in today's episode, and I will explain what I mean later. Either way, I'm really thankful to have all of you listening. You're going to have to forgive my froggy voice. I've come down with a cold recently, and don't worry, it's not that sickness. It's just a cold. I've checked. So please forgive that, and perhaps you're also surprised to be hearing an episode dropping on a Wednesday. So I'm just throwing you curveballs here, left and right. But I thank you all for dealing with that, dealing with me, and most certainly thank you for listening to the show. In particular, there is one of you, a very special guest, and I'm talking, of course, about the Patreon supporter of the day, which for this episode is Samuel Barham. Sam is a classically trained pianist who studied piano and the Russian language at the Moscow Conservatory and now makes his living as an artificial intelligence researcher at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. And I'm happy to hear he's finally decided to do something productive with his life and take up the banjo. He's a VIP lounge regular, and he's already making great progress, making some fine music on that banjo. Although now I'm a bit suspicious. Are we all just part of some artificial intelligence experiment that Sam is running? I'm not quite sure, but either way, Sam, I'm thrilled to have you as a listener and a supporter of the show. Everyone else, go to patreon.com/banjopodcast to find out how you can support the show just like Sam here did. If you'd like to contact the show for any reason, that is pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. Always feel free to get a hold of me with any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, or if you need me to give you my Christmas list for gift ideas, I have quite a few, so happy to share that. And speaking of holiday gifts, I have a couple holiday gifts for you. You've heard of the monthly VIP Lounge, which is a video meetup for the Patreon supporters that I already mentioned. And that's a monthly meetup with me and the fellow supporters. This month, I decided that I'm going to open that VIP Lounge to everybody. I will publish that we do it through Google Meet, and that meeting link will be published on my Patreon page. Again, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast. The VIP Lounge is scheduled for Monday, December 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So at some point before then, I will publish that code. You'll have to go there, but it will be open to everybody. And maybe I'm going to regret that. It might get a little out of control, but it should be a really good time. And the other gift I have for all of you is a merchandise discount. You've all seen the cool kids running around with their Picky Fingers t-shirts. Now is your best chance to get one for yourself. If you go to the main webpage for the show, that's banjopodcast.com, and you use coupon code PICKY21 at checkout, you will get a 21% discount off of your entire order. So now's the time to stock up on those t-shirts and the stickers, and that coupon code is good now through the end of the year. Today's featured guest is Cameron DeWhitt, a fantastic banjo player and the host of the Get Up in the Cool podcast, which features various old-time and other folk-style musicians. And Cameron always lends their banjo talents to the jam sessions that happen on that podcast. And we did a crossover show back at IBMA in October. So this is actually an episode of both podcasts, and as a result, you are probably actually going to hear more about me and more of my playing than you ever do on my own show, and that's because Cameron and I had to compete to ask each other questions, and following the format of Cameron's show, we played a lot of music too. So I think you'll really enjoy the change of pace. You'll probably learn something about me and hopefully learn a lot about Cameron DeWhitt. They've developed their own particular style called pitchfork banjo. It sounds a lot like clawhammer, but there's a bit more to it, and you will hear all about that. I should also briefly explain that we began recording this on an outdoor balcony in Raleigh, North Carolina, as I said, during IBMA. And so you might notice a bit of outdoorsy kind of sounds, and we did eventually, about halfway through the episode, move inside. So the audio does improve when the various parties and traffic and nature sounds became a little too unbearable for us to continue out there. So please give a warm Picky Fingers welcome to Cameron DeWhitt of the Get Up in the Cool podcast and the Tall Poppy String Band.
Keith Billick, welcome to Get Up in the Pool.
No, Cameron DeWhitt, welcome to the Picky Fingers.
No, you hang up.
You can't fire me, I quit. No, this is awesome.
Crossover episode.
Yeah.
I've only done one of these ever. It was with Charlie Walden. I don't know if he's like a Missouri fiddler, lives in Chicago, and it's super fun. But yeah, we were planning on doing something like this back in 2020 when I was planning on coming to Earful of Fiddle.
Something interrupted it, I guess.
Yeah, these things fall through.
We got busy, I guess.
Yeah.
No, it's really great to finally do this, and I will say that when I started getting the idea for the podcast, you scout out what the potential competition or redundancy might be, or is there even a niche for this?
Yeah.
And so when I searched Banjo podcasts initially, yours was like the main one.
Oh, thank God it showed up.
There. Oh yeah, easily.
SEO and all that.
And then fortunately, I identified that we would be different enough that it was totally cool. But
I appreciate you putting that thought into it, and I totally agree. You have yours is a banjo podcast, and the banjo is expansive and covers so much.
There's enough.
Yeah,
enough room.
So why did you want to make Picky Fingers? What led you to want to be an interviewer about banjos?
I didn't necessarily want to be an interviewer, but I wanted the podcast to exist.
That's a great answer.
There's this tome in the bluegrass banjo world. I don't know if you'll be familiar. It's called Masters of the Five-String Banjo. It's this thick book, maybe like 400 pages, and it was written in the 80s. And it's in-depth interviews with a lot of like the legendary players: Ralph Stanley, J.D. Crowe, Earl Scruggs. Just all the people that everyone loves in the bluegrass banjo world. And there's like this database of the microphones that everyone uses and the types of bridges that everyone uses.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. And so for the longest time, it's been in the back of my mind that, wow, there really needs to be a volume 2 of this, because it's in the 80s, and there's been so many great players since then. So that's one thing. And then another thing was I listened to a lot of podcasts. I had this crappy day job where I listened to things, and of course I wanted to hear that, and that was always my goal. I need to hear this Masters of the Five-String Banjo type of information in podcast form. And after a while, it kind of occurred to me that okay, well, I know some things about banjo. I have microphones. I was a sound guy for a while. I was a banjo salesman for a while. I worked at Elderly for a long time, so I know about banjos and about gear. I have enough hands in different areas that I thought I might be able to actually speak intelligently to enough people to make it work. So I just tried. Yeah. And I'm still doing it 3-ish years later.
That's great.
So how about you? I'm curious to what you were trying to accomplish.
I will absolutely answer that. But first I wanted to say, this is going to be hilarious.
Okay.
I'm not what I'm about to say, but just us trying to crossfire. And it's going to be a fun little wrestling match.
Yeah.
Banjo people, sometimes it's hard to say whether they like the idea of banjos and talking about banjos more, or actual banjo music more. And I think those things go hand in hand, because there's so much it's the banjo is this avatar for all of this. It's this totem for all of this. I mean, it's literally that. Yeah. But people project so much onto it, and then want to think about the instrument just as much as the music. And I think that's really smart that you're I want to make a version of this tome.
Well, I think we've all probably witnessed it with people who are just really into, or really love to nerd out about anything.
Yes.
That they might feel isolated in their everyday life, but when they finally get around somebody who's really on the same wavelength as them, the floodgates open, and they love talking about whatever it is. Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot the same way. But at the same time, each interview, as you know, it goes different. Some people do talk a lot about it, and some people don't. Some people you need to maybe pull the information you want.
Yeah, it's some people talk more with their instrument, and some people talk more with their voice. And if you get them to stop talking, they'll play their instrument, and then everywhere in between. Yeah.
Right. So I'm curious to you about we discussed right before we started recording what I like to get out of people.
Yes.
What's your take on do you have a goal going into each interview of what is the essence that you want people to listeners to come away with from each interview?
Yeah, well, I will say, and I've got my record saying this before, and I think it's still true that like the podcast started just as a pretense to get to like play music with people that I like, you know, and have like a hang with them, especially because like I don't know, I almost never, maybe I never have, I don't know. I prefer not to send people away at festivals who want to come and jam. I just don't have the stomach for it. I can't do it, and I prefer not to. But I also really like having intimate conversations and jams, one-on-one, small group, and it sort of serves as a way for me to, at festivals, have that really focused experience with someone. And when I'm not at a festival, you have a pretense to invite myself over to someone's house and play music with them.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's like kind of the main thing, is that like I had a very, you know, pure but ultimately like self-centered like reason for doing the show. Is like, I want to like have a good time. So
yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it a little more, I guess an additional reason for me was that I was playing and performing pretty regularly for quite a while, but I hit a spot where I wasn't. I didn't have a band, I had a family and job and stuff like that, and I was feeling like I really just needed to make sure that I was still part of that world and still relevant. Not like I have an ego about it, but that's like what I want to do. It's part of my therapy, is to be involved in music, you know.
Yeah.
So it's my way of keeping my foot in the door, even if I don't necessarily have as many performing opportunities or recording opportunities, and I'm always working on those things too, but it was just, that's another side benefit in addition to what I said.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I maybe was in sort of a similar place where I was just getting into old-time music, actually, and then I'd only been playing for a few years, and I was like trying to start bands with people, and it was like kind of, it's hard in general to start a band, but you know, trying to figure out what I was going to do with it, if I wanted to do anything with it other than just do it for fun, you know, and also feeling like, stalling out in my own sort of musical career and being like, well, I listen to a lot of interview podcasts, and I feel like I could just do that, but just musically interview people as well.
Right. Yeah, same.
But I guess in terms of like what I'm trying to get out with people, like for the listener, I want to figure out what is personal about my guests' relationship to old-time music or whatever genre we're playing in. It's not always old-time. Sometimes I'll have a Scandi guest on, or bluegrass, you know, or whatever.
Scandinavian, is that what you said?
Yeah. I want to perform interest and like a sort of like pleasure-oriented interrogation, you know, and my goal is, I think my ultimate goal is, can I get my guest to say something about themselves that maybe they would struggle to say about themselves in another context, like, and then like enjoy what they said. And then also secondary would be like the listener getting to have that sort of information and feeling. The thing I think is cool about podcasts is like, it's like a weird sort of parasocial friendship that I think is really cool. Is like, my favorite podcast is like, when I listen to them, it's like, oh yeah, those are like my buds. I hang out with them every week. I don't say anything, you know, but like, I've enjoyed so much being on that end of it, because that's the main media that I consume, is listening to podcasts. And like, I like having relationships with people, and I try to have it not be problematic, but you know, like that parasocial like relationship, or my like check-in with these people, even though they don't know me, is like meaningful to me. And it's so intimate because it's like I'm listening earbuds, and it's like they're right next to me and talking right into my brain. And like, I don't know, I think that like that sort of fly on the wall kind of like energy is really exciting. And typically, like, I like to just with my guests like have the conversation that I want to have with them as if the mic wasn't there. And then ideally everyone's cool with with that going public. Sometimes we have the conversation and I take things down because they get too real or too intense, you know. But like, that's the conversation I want to have with these people, you know, if they'll have it with me. And it's not, I don't want it to ever be coercive, but you know, I think there's some sort of weird voyeurism exhibition thing that I think has some sort of benefit to the medium that's like complicated, but I think it's cool. And then in old time community, I get to meet these people who like listen to the show, which is also cool. And then it makes it real, you know. So it connects the circle or something. It like just turns it into a social relationship instead of just parasocial.
To what degree do you view yourself as providing like an archivist type of service? You know what I mean?
Yeah. More and more. I think once I started hearing people say like, it's important to me that you're archiving this stuff, I'm like, oh, thank God, good. Yeah. I guess I'm doing that. And then I think I've had 2 guests die now, and neither of them were profoundly recorded. I think one of them may have been like under or unrecorded. Wow. And then one of them maybe had an album or 2, I think.
So your show is literally the only
it might be or one of the only.
Yeah.
And it's and I think in both cases it's the only candid kitchen music making, which I think is very different than tells you different things than studio.
And it's also different
making.
hearing even if it's the same words, it's also different hearing it in somebody's voice rather than reading it in a magazine or online, which is, I don't know, it's just a lot cooler.
What about for you? Have you gotten that sort of? Do you feel like you're accomplishing your goal of making that tome that you set out to do, and like, is this like, yes, this is the show I like want to be making? And
yeah, I really do. And it's heady when you take a step back and think about how many people I've talked to that I really look up to and are heroes in my music community, and I'm always flattered that they want to have anything to do with me and being involved in it. But you know, I've had very few people not want to be, and I don't know that I expected that at first. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not that I'm not always trying to improve even more. I think my main weakness, I sort of, I listed before, like, I'm an okay enough banjo player. I know somewhat about banjos and gear. I know the music pretty well. I think my main weak point was actually as an interviewer. I've never gone to journalism school. That's nothing I ever tried to study.
Yeah.
I just threw myself into it. So that's more and more what I am trying to develop as a skill. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you've had the experience of listening to yourself talk to people.
Well, I edit it, so...
And then you're just painful. Like, oh my God, I said that? And oh, why would I ask this question? Or oh, I didn't catch that they were teeing me up for this, And
missed follow-ups. Right.
Have you started changing the way that you interact with people outside of recording them just because you've been listening so much? Have you learned about how you talk to people?
Yes. That's awful. It's awful. You learn your own vocal tics quite well, and then when you hear yourself say them any other time, it just it grates on you.
It's really bad.
And I think I may have even said this in a podcast. So I trained myself to stop saying as an audible pause.
Yeah.
But instead of now speaking in a nice, flowing, continuous sentence, there's just holes where I would have said like. So now I tend to talk like Captain Kirk, and I don't have any pauses. So that's my current frustration with myself. But even, not even as much the pauses, like I just said, but like just the art of interviewing, the types of questions, how to get people comfortable, and that's something that I'm still just very, very new at.
Yeah.
So I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, I hope to continue to get better at it. I think when I started it, I was like, no, I'm good at talking to people. I'm a social person. This will be easy. And then I was like, when I'm not having a smooth interaction with someone, when my speaking style or social style isn't completely compatible with someone just in the wild, that will kind of solve itself. You know, like if we're at a party, we'll go talk to other people or go do other stuff. But in an interview, you can't go anywhere.
It's a little more awkward.
You're right there, and then someone has to, meet the other person where they're at or meet halfway, and it's like, that's what interviewing is.
That's your job, right?
Yeah, it's like, you can't just be charismatic. You have to, like, know how to adapt who you are.
Going back to what you said about you just wanted an excuse to jam with people whose music you dug. That was part of, I think, my original concept, is that I wanted to do that. And somewhere along the lines, I think I got just too sheepish about, like, I felt like I was already, and maybe I shouldn't feel like this. Maybe I'm just too Midwestern, and I don't want to inconvenience anybody any more than I absolutely have to. But I don't know, I just felt like I was already asking a lot of people to take their time out and to talk with me, and then I felt like it added a level of, like, presumptuousness of, like, now you have to play with me. What, let's play music together.
Yeah.
Is that silly for me to think that way? Because I admire that you do that, and I think you do awesome.
Thank you so much.
And I'm jealous because that's what I wanted to do.
Well,
but
I think you should. I think you should just do it.
Okay.
And see what happens. But I mean, you're saying, is that silly? And I think that's actually a very reasonable attitude to have. And I think my attitude about it has been, I don't know, like maybe even like a little out of touch, and then it's just sort of worked out. But like, even though like I'm a non-binary person, I was raised with a lot of, male privilege, and I also was for a very long time only child, and had like a lot of golden boy kind of stuff thrown at me in my families, and like, just like, yeah, I've had like an enormous amount of sort of like privilege and too much encouragement that a lot of people in a lot of my shared demographics have. Yeah. And I think I just...
So you're entitled is what you're saying.
Exactly. I think I just have been riding on that and then doing my best to check and make sure like that, that people don't feel taken advantage of or like they're being asked to do so much. But also, just like trusting like, people will say no if they don't want to. And if I think that maybe they won't say no, I try to detect whether or not they are trying to say no.
There's a soft no.
Yeah. And,
Has that happened?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been amazed at how many people are just totally down to, like, do this. I didn't think I'd be able to keep it going this long every week.
Yeah, what are you up to? You're in the several hundreds.
Yeah, 260 something at the time of recording this, yeah.
And it's weekly, right?
Yeah. Back when I had like a full-time job, I would, take Christmas off and stuff, but or take a little break, but like more or less it's been going, 5 years. So
I feel like I'm always right up against the wall, just trying to. Mine's
every
other week. Mine's every other week.
Mm.
Do you feel like you are in any danger of running out of people to talk to?
That's a great question. You know, I think at a certain point I was like, okay, the show's been going on long enough that I could just loop through this same set of 100 people and it would stay fresh.
You have had a few repeats,
And
right?
I have, yeah. Like Jake Blunt has been on, he's been on twice this week as like a guest host and as like a part of a group.
Yeah,
you know, it's not the main guest, but he's been on a bunch. He's one of my closest friends. And then, you know, whatever city I'm living in, I will inevitably call on those people, you know, like, hey, like, I need to record someone. Let's just hang out and play some tunes, you know.
Yeah.
And then I'll have
Do you
those
move around
people.
quite a bit?
No, just like I started in Philly and I live in Portland now. And I'm staying in Portland, Oregon now. But in those times when I lived in Philly, Chris Dalnadar was a local fiddler there that I loved playing with, and I was in a band with at one point, and I don't know, he was on 3 or 4 times, and the Hawkinson sisters have been on multiple times in Portland, and Joel Brown and Colin Stackhouse. So yeah, I love having people on more than once, especially if they're like my buds, or if they have other things to say, or projects that they're working on. Yeah, sure. So yeah. What about you? Are you concerned about running out of banjoists who want to be interviewed? And
no, just because, you know, time tends to make more banjoists, for one thing.
That's a great point.
So if I stall long enough, no, I have no shortage, and I've recently branched out to start doing more clawhammer players.
Oh, right
For
on.
the longest time, it was just bluegrass.
Did you not want to do clawhammer players?
It's not. I didn't want to do clawhammer players, but it was more just out of my own naivety.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't think I could ask. I don't know the repertoire. I don't know the major players or bands in that world. I don't know intelligent questions to ask.
Right.
So I just was feeling there's no way I could prepare as well for that as I feel like I can prepare for people who I'm more familiar with. Or
do you feel more prepared now for that?
No, but I guess I'm willing to just take the chance.
Yeah.
And so far it's gone great. Maybe I've just lucked out and had really wonderful players. And I make it clear to them right off the bat that I have some level of ignorance, and I just try to listen to their music enough to know, just see what catches my ear, and maybe ask them about that. Like, oh, that song seems to have a lot of cool techniques, and I don't know what they are, but you could tell me. So go ahead.
What the hell just happened?
Right.
That's easy question you can always ask. What was that?
What was that?
Explain yourself, sometimes I'll say.
I've said that too.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
You gotta have that, like, you know, adversarial
What say
relationships.
you?
Yeah. Can we play another tune?
Yeah. How about just Sturgeon?
Yeah, great. Can you play that in A?
All right. Hopefully we kind of play this the same.
Yeah, we'll see if we have the...
Combination.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you know Jeff Sturgeon. Do they play that in bluegrass circles?
No.
Yeah, well, thanks
Not really.
for picking an old
I
time
don't even know
tune.
why I know it.
Yeah.
Just a few of those.
Folks, we are in a golden age of online instrument instruction, and at the top of that world is Peghead Nation. Peghead Nation has streaming video courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele, so you can learn bluegrass, old time, and plenty of other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in all of roots music. Check out the courses they have, and this is just for banjo. You could get beginning or bluegrass banjo with Bill Evans, clawhammer banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward style banjo with Bruce Molsky, the banjo according to Danny Barnes, and contemporary bluegrass banjo with Wes Corbett. Each of those courses include high-quality video lessons, downloadable notation and tab, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes and songs to play. And the best thing yet is you're going to get your first month free just by being a listener of this show. So go to pegheadnation.com and use promo code PickyFingers at checkout and claim your free month of the best instruction out there. And if you find yourself needing a banjo or accessories to get ready for those Peghead Nation courses, I highly recommend you check out Elderly Instruments, which is the world's most trusted source of new, used, and vintage stringed instruments, including banjos, guitars, violins, mandolins, ukuleles, all that stuff. They're going to have the best instruments you can find anywhere, and we're talking everything from the more affordable instruments for people starting out on up through the most highly sought-after vintage instruments. Elderly Instruments has been family-owned since 1972, and if you can't make it to their Lansing, Michigan showroom, you can see their full selection at elderly.com or give them a call at 517-372-7880 for some professional advice on all of your banjo and other stringed instrument needs. And you know what all these stringed instruments have in common? They all sound better with Ghs Strings. Ghs Strings is another sponsor of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast, and I'm proud to say they have been made in Battle Creek, Michigan since 1974. And if you don't want to take my word for it, maybe you'll believe such people as J.D. Crowe, Sonny Osborne, and Bela Fleck, just a few of the many, many users of Ghs Strings. So go check them out, ghsstrings.com. They have a wide selection of gauged sets so that no matter what you're looking for, you'll be able to find something there.
So how did you get started playing the banjo?
Damn it! I got started playing the banjo because in college I went to MSU, and one of my best friends was from Mobile, Alabama, and she was moving her mom out of a house that her mom had lived in for like 20 years, and I had already been a guitar player, so she knew I was into playing guitars and stuff like that, and she found an old banjo at her mom's house as they were moving out that I don't even think she knew was there. But in the process was like, oh, Keith likes playing instruments. I'll bring this back to him. And oh, you're in Portland now, right?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the restaurant called Co-Queen?
No.
Or something like that?
What is that?
Okay, so this friend of mine, she's become like a world-class, like Beard Award-winning chef. And she's worked at like fancy restaurants in New Orleans and Paris and San Francisco. And now she has her own place in Portland.
I'll check it out.
Which you should totally go to.
Every once in a while, I'll go to a fancy restaurant.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, she's the best. But anyway, so she brought me a banjo. So it literally came to me. I had never considered playing it, but she brought it back.
When was this? This was while you were at MSU.
At MSU, yeah.
Oh.
So like year 2000-ish, something like that. When I was 21 is when I got started. So it came to me, and I just fell in love with it right away. I started playing, and I'm sure pissed off a lot of my college roommates. But there was actually a pretty supportive community. There was sort of like a folk uprising kind of thing. Like there was a really popular local band that did a lot of like, they were a popular bar band, but they kind of did a leftover salmon type of thing where they did like Cajun music and bluegrass and stuff. So it was kind of like a cool music again.
Yeah.
In my community. So not only did I enjoy playing it, but I actually saw an avenue. Because I was an okay guitar player, but I wasn't going to be like the best guy in town, but maybe I could be the banjo guy in town.
Right on.
And there wasn't really one of those. So I do love the banjo, and I love playing the banjo, but I think even more than that, I love just playing music with people. So
You saw like maybe there was an opportunity for you to fill a specific kind of role as a banjo guy.
Yeah.
When maybe there was a surplus of guitar guys.
Yeah, and I mean, another case in point was like even after I started getting pretty serious about the banjo, I joined a Pink Floyd tribute band, not playing banjo, playing like guitars and saxophones and keyboards and all that stuff. And I didn't I was a banjo player by that point. I liked Pink Floyd, but I didn't love Pink Floyd, and I didn't want to go back to playing guitar, but it was an opportunity to play like really cool rock and roll shows.
Yeah.
And so I was willing to do that, just to be a part of like putting on a cool show. And I just liked being a part of things.
I appreciate and relate to that. Yeah.
When did you start playing, and how did you find that?
Oh, I think it was, kind of similar in some ways, just like I was playing guitar and...
Was this in Philly?
No, I grew up in Oregon, and I picked up the banjo. My first kind of banjo mentor, not my first teacher, but my first person who really gave me music to listen to and tried to steer me towards trad music. If for no other reason than it might better inform my playing and my whatever music I decided to make, was Bill Jolliffe. You may know Jake Jolliffe,
His
man.
dad?
Yeah, I guess I knew him at the time to be maybe one of the only. I grew up Quaker, and I went to George Fox University, and George Fox is the founder of Quakerism. Awful school. And in terms of it's a conservative Christian school, and they are up to some nonsense there, and it seems sometimes to be getting worse. However, Bill Jolliffe was my poetry professor, and I studied American Lit with him, and I took a banjo independent study with him, and he was one of the Quakers, one of the few actual Quakers there, and then one of the few people that I knew to be a Quaker that actually, I think, valued what and walked the walk,
Yeah,
about what
I wanted to ask you about this anyway. So you said it's a Quaker school, but then you said it's really conservative Christian. Did you say that? And explain to me that seems inconsistent to me. So how does Quakerism fit into conservative?
I mean, it's a whole thing. So I don't know what happened, but it's not a Quaker school anymore, and there happen to be a few Quaker kind of communities in the school, or a few representatives that are among the staff and some leadership. But mostly it's just sort of a mainline conservative Christian, not the worst. It's not a Westboro Baptist vibe by any means. They're I think they want to appear very accepting, and they'll go to great lengths to talk about how much they care about their trans students who they won't let live where they want to, and things like that. But Bill Jolliffe is really cool, and was a great professor and mentor, and would talk to me about my clawhammer playing and three finger playing when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do
Were
that.
you?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Well, my first teacher was Michinobu Imori, who was the double reeds like adjunct, or maybe even just guest professor teacher at George Fox in the music program. Like he mostly taught double reeds, and I took a semester of banjo with him because he happened to be a banjo player. He learned in Japan and from like a book and recordings, then came over, and people were like, "Wow, you sound great. You sound like a West Virginia clawhammer player." You know, he's like, "Yeah."
And he played clawhammer.
Yeah, and he played clawhammer. He played plectrum style. He played three finger. Played everything, and he just gave me like a sample platter of like, here's all the stuff you could do. You figure out what you want to do, and he was a really cool guy. He would wear these button down white shirts that he had tie dyed, and like he was like a oboe player and a banjo player, and like he's a character.
That's a really awesome.
I should
image.
reconnect with him. He's probably still in Portland, so yeah.
That sounds totally awesome. So it sounds pretty similar. Picked it up in college.
I guess a lot of those details are really different. But like, I was doing songwriting and banjo, guitar playing, and I was like, oh, I want to like play banjo because it seems like it isn't as ubiquitous, and like I might serve some different functions in musical settings, and little did I know that like when I would eventually get into playing old time music, like there's so many banjo players, and usually that's what there's too many of in a jam, in my experience, Yeah. Not that I have any issue with that. I love a banjo full jam, but
So one of the things that really fascinates me about your show,
okay,
is your apparent ability to pick up on. You get half a dozen tunes thrown at you every week, and it's really impressive how well you seem to adapt your playing into all of it.
Thanks.
Like it's great. To what do you attribute your ability to do that, or is there more like behind the scenes stuff than maybe the listeners realize?
Yeah, so when I first started, I had this Google form that I would have my guests fill out, and I thought that every episode would be like edutainment, and that I would have time to practice each tune before I'd be totally ready, and that the conversations would be about like a specific region of, like I would have like Harry Bullock on, and we would talk about Mississippi fiddle tunes, or whatever. And then eventually it was like, well, that's not sustainable, and there's all these other people that I want to interview that would never fill out a Google form in their life, and cannot be made to commit to a tune list. And eventually I figured out, and then also like don't have anything particular to say other than they just want to have a cool conversation and hang and play tunes. And that's great too, But as far as learning tunes goes, it used to be more like we'd have like a jam beforehand, just to sort of warm up, get to know each other musically, and then I would hit record. And then a lot of the time it would be first take, and then sometimes it would be like, I don't know, sometimes if it was like a really hard tune, it would be like, 4 or 5, times of me struggling through it. But anymore, what we generally do on the show is like what we're doing now today, which is just like, we'll try out the tune, and then with the understanding that maybe that's a dry run where I figure out how the tune basically goes, and I just try to get to the point where I'm not being distracting. Or if I am being distracting from my guest playing, it's because I'm doing a fun thing that hopefully my guest will respond to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but not just like, wow, Cameron's, bless their heart, they're trying so hard. Like I don't want it to be that. Sometimes it is, inevitably. But yeah, just doing the show for over and over and over, and learning 6 tunes a week, learning heavy air quotes, But then I would say before that, like, I went to school for music, and I did ear training and music theory and stuff. But I would say the biggest thing that probably had an impact outside of just playing a lot of old-time music, on my old-time music, would be I had this choir director, Vance Seeley, who in high school, who every day in choir, and I was in multiple choirs, so sometimes it was multiple times a day. He would have us do movable do solfege exercises. Does this mean anything to you?
Barely.
So like
solfeggio
Yeah.
is... You go ahead and say it.
Sure, yeah. Everyone knows
Just back myself into
do,
the
a
corner.
deer, a female
Right,
deer,
right.
etc. It's that scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. In Europe and other places, they use a fixed do system, which means they don't say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's like C is do, and it's always do, So that's what they use to refer to notes, or maybe they'll use C instead of T or whatever. There's different versions of it. But in the U.S., when we use solfege, we use movable do, which means that do can be whatever we want it to be. It's the root. It's the first note of whatever scale that you're in. So it's great for learning relative pitch and learning your intervals. And we would do exercises in that, and the one that probably helped the most, other than like sight reading in solfege, would be this one where we would go do do di re ra do di re ra do di re mi fa pi so si la li ti do ti te la le so se fa mi me re ra do. We go up and down to each one, and then we go do ti do ti te di do ti te la li ti do, and then do ti te la le so se fa mi me re ra do di re mi fa pi so si la li ti do, and we run out of breath, but we would like go over every chromatic note. And as long as you're staying in relatively diatonic music, it falls apart, I think, when you try to do jazz. But if you're sticking to music that stays in one key at a time, then...
like most old time.
Yeah, like most old time,
and,
yeah.
Right.
Especially, old time is 90%, major pentatonic scale.
Right.
And then some major scale, and then some other modes. And modes of the pentatonic scale, but it's pretty simple, in terms of you don't have to change keys constantly. And so I was like boot camp for 4 years, just like learning how diatonic music works and building a virtual instrument in my brain and my voice that could serve as a bridge between me and whatever instrument I was studying. So
but even knowing the relative notes that you're working with, if you hear a fiddle tune and you know exactly what notes those are, at least relatively, laying it out on a banjo fingerboard is still like an extra step. At least to me.
Totally,
Most and especially once you get into the fact that you old time players have a whole bunch of different tunings available. So something like Farewell Tryon. I don't know. Are you using double C or are you using drop C?
I
decided that might be a
decided
question that you don't know right away. Like when you hear the tune, you don't know if it's going to lay out better on one or the other.
Like when we were doing like a sound check, I was trying to play out a standard tuning for Farewell Tryon. It had been a while since I did it. There's a bunch of big position switches in that tune because it has a huge range. So I was trying to play along in standard. I was like, you know what? I already know how to do this in double C, like mountain tuning, some people call it. So I'm just going to do that instead. And so that's what I did, and it worked out fine. It's still been a while since I played it. But, I try to simplify the amount of tunings that I use. So typically I'll use standard G for a lot of stuff, if I can. I'll use standard G with changing the fifth string, of course. I'll use it for G, for C, for D, for F, for B flat, for A minor, for different minor modes. And then I'll use standard A for any A minor, any A mode. Sometimes for D. In a pinch, I'll use it for G if I'm playing a tune that, like I was playing a traditional like New Mexico tune that changed keys 3 times in each section, and then there's a section in like A, G, and D, and I forget what I did with it, but like I had to figure out, is it going to be better for me to be in A tuning and then like play G in A tuning, or the other way around?
Right.
I don't remember what I did, but like that.
There's some amount of translation that needs to happen from the sound of it to the mechanics.
And then I'll use double C or double D for just like straight up old time raging stuff where maybe I can't fully bang away and do the thing that I'm supposed to do unless I'm in one of those tunings that's very open.
Your comfort zone, more or less.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah, well, it depends. If I'm playing old time, sometimes that's the best option. Yeah. And then I have a little bit less flexibility with it because those are super unintuitive tunings, I think, especially for moving past the 5th fret, because anytime you have a major second between the 1st and 2nd strings,
that's so small.
That's the most common movement, a whole step. In music, most movement in a melody is going to be a major second. So that means you have to lay down a bar, break your finger position, or do something, or skip a note. What the hell's going on out there?
I think they heard our last tune and they're cheering for us.
So like a major second, a whole step is the most common, movement in a melody, which means that if you're playing it on the first 2 strings, then you have to lay down a bar or break your left hand position in order to play that melody or start skipping notes. Mm-hmm. You got to skip notes all the time in old time music. That's part of the job of playing clawhammers. You're not supposed to play all of the notes most of the time, or you're supposed to play different pathways, so that's expected. But anytime you skip a note, you have to sort of make a decision, and it requires a certain amount of sort of musical wisdom to know which note is important and which note do you skip. That decision making is really hard, especially if you're navigating a different tuning, and then physically it's harder. So I try to simplify. When I can, I'll play in the standard G, and I found it's really helpful in playing other traditions because they use different pathways, and there is a weird kind of logic to standard G tuning. If you're playing music that's based at all in triads or scales, you can learn how those shapes fall, and most of the time you only have to play 1 or 2 notes consecutively on a single string, and it's not too hard to navigate in this tuning.
Can you think of the tune that has been suggested by your interview subject over these years and all these episodes that was the most difficult for you to adapt to?
Probably that episode with Lone Piñon where they were doing traditional New Mexican music, where I was having to learn New Mexican folk music, which was I had to change keys a bunch, and then I had to play these lines that had different pathways in old-time music. Probably either that or some of the nickel harpa stuff that I had to play.
Oh, yeah.
Every once in a while I'll get asked to play a jig, and those are really hard with clawhammer.
Yeah. That's gotta be a nightmare.
But yeah, that one tune from Lone Piñon, I don't remember what it's called, but that was really hard. And they gave it to me in advance because it was going to be for a live audience at this festival. So when that happens, when I get to do that, which I love doing, I'm send me the tunes in advance. First takes only.
Why does New Mexico have such a unique folk music tradition? Is this a Native American type of tradition, or a Mexican influenced? I haven't heard what you're talking about, so I don't.
Sure, yeah, I would say I at least project commonalities between a lot of Southwest U.S. and Mexican music, and to some extent, basically it stops there. Then once you get to Guatemala and Colombia, it's totally different. Not that I've had any of those musicians on my shows. I've just listened to that music for fun because it rules. But Mexican and then Southwest music, and then maybe in some ways, to some extent, some indigenous U.S. and Canada, area music. I can at least project some commonalities between all of that stuff. So I think there's some stuff there. I can't necessarily speak on that, but I would say that in this case, Lone Piñon's whole thing is that they play hyper-regional music that is crooked and quirky in the way
changes keys.
And changes keys, and it was the specificity of it that, from what I understand, they were telling me after while we were all hanging out afterwards at this festival, they're telling me that like mariachi music is kind of like bluegrass in that there's kind of a canon that you have to know what the canon is in order to be able to participate in it. And the idea is that you learn this repertoire, and as long as you know this basic repertoire, you can kind of you can get a job anywhere. But what the repertoire is made of is the old time musics of different communities and areas in, the Southwest and in Mexico. And that, those original versions are weird and crooked and quirky, but the edges are sort of rounded off in order to make it this, interchangeable parts. And I don't know if that's fair to like, if that's actually a good comparison to like bluegrass versus old time, but I think it's sort of a similar kind of thing, maybe.
So speaking of bluegrass, we're having this discussion during the IBMA, International Bluegrass Music Association convention, which you wouldn't know by the background music here,
we'll see how much of that comes through.
Which is another story altogether, I guess. But I'm curious what brought you here, because you are an old-time music podcast, you're an old-time musician, and although there is a lot of crossover, it might just be, I guess, just a little bit surprising that you would want to come here. So what did you view as your goal, or what opportunities did you see?
A lot of answers. The main and sort of first answer was just like, I miss hanging out with Jake. Jake Blunt. I hadn't seen him in 2 years.
Oh, awesome.
Since Clifftop 2019, I think. And we sort of missed connections. Like I was going to try to go to Berkeley old time to hang out with him because that's a late September festival. And then I was going to try to see if he could come to Harry Smith Frolic up in Massachusetts in July, and he was busy then. And he's like, why don't you just come to IBMA? I know it's like a little intimidating, but like there's a lot of old time musicians here, and there's
you'll at least have some friends.
Yeah, and I was like, great. I'll just plan on doing that. I'm so starved for social stuff anyway, and also I want to like hang out with you and be crammed in this weird little Airbnb all week with him. That was kind of like the main first reason why I wanted to come, and then also I was like, I could interview people while I'm here. It'd be great to actually stock up some interviews instead of, I'm sure you can relate to this, living like episode to episode, like who am I going to get during the pandemic? It's hard to stock it all up when it's all remote.
So how has it been for you in regards to not only getting to socialize and hang with friends, but having a couple opportunities for the show?
Oh yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I would love to maybe at some point be like invited to like I have a band that's the other thing, Tall Poppy String Band, that has an album coming out next year, and it's expensive to be here. It would be great to like have a showcase or something next year, but like I would love to do it again because I've been having a great time. And I've only done old time music jams or like jams like this with like old time curious bluegrass musicians like yourself.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah. And so I haven't had to worry about like ruining some bluegrass jam because there's been so many great old time jams happening. Yeah. So no, it's been awesome.
As much as I imagine you learn from all of your guests and having to keep up with all the repertoire that they're throwing at you, is there some part of you that feels like that interferes with maybe your own personal, not growth on the instrument, because that is growth, having to adapt, but like I don't know if you compose music or if you were trying to forge in another direction and now you're too preoccupied having to prepare for all these shows, that is there another aspect that is being neglected because of that?
Wow, that's a great question. Sometimes I think about that, like when I'm thinking about what do I want to be working on in my like life or in my career or in my playing and my musicianship, like sometimes I think like, oh yeah, I need to like work on my fiddling so that I can like do more fiddling on the show so that I can have a more specific things to offer to like, guitarists or banjo players instead of just playing banjo duets or guitar backing up of banjo. I would love to be better at the fiddle, and then I catch myself thinking about that and like, yeah, because that would make the show better. And then I'll come to IBMA and just like watch people shred and think like, I need to get better at playing the banjo because that's like my instrument, and I want, I want to like improve and like get to the next level.
Just invest,
full like
full throttle.
What do I want to be? Like a podcaster who's like can jam in any sort of setting or fill any niche, or do I want to like be better at like a higher level musician for some reason? Or for fun, or so that I can have other kinds of opportunities, So like, yeah, I go back and forth between all of that. Just like, I want to be a better, community leader and like in Portland and like be more plugged in there for old time music, or I want to like have the podcast be better, or I want to be more technically proficient on the banjo or more adventurous, and so I don't know. I kind of chip away at all of those. I don't think I ever could just decide on one thing anyway. Like I typically do things in seasons. So it kind of works itself out.
You've removed a lot of like the burden of decision making from yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
I can appreciate that.
And it's nice to have. It is nice to have the podcast because it's like that's like an anchor, and like I think I would be really stressed out if I had to like hustle to figure out each gig, like, but it's like, or even just like socially, if I Cliff Top, when I go there, it's like the first couple of years I didn't have the podcast when I was going there. And I'd have a few like freakouts, and that's like not uncommon for people who go there and stay like the whole week.
Freakouts about what?
Just about being in a place with 5,000 people and just like, I don't know, vibes and like getting in your own head about like having imposter syndrome or whatever, or like drama, or like even if everything's going great, just like I need some space.
Just intense.
Yeah, and the noise, and I'm like a really extroverted person. I love being around people. I want to party. I want to stay up late. But yeah, it's just like I can't handle that. But like having like the show is like I have one thing that I have to like show up for every day, and that means that there's like a structure that I can sort of like fall into or adjust for, or say like, oh, I'm gonna stop partying tonight because I'm getting overwhelmed and I need to be able to like form cohesive sentences for my interview tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for the fact that we're doing this on the last day of IBMA, kudos to both of us for...
Absolutely.
I think we're both mostly coherent, it seems like. Not a stammering mess. Like,
yeah.
That is in the range of potential outcomes that could have happened. And
yeah,
I think it's okay.
Let's play another tune.
Okay. It's just an Avalon Quick Step.
Oh, yeah.
There's that one. Go for that one. I would probably know.
That's great. I love that you called that tune Avalon Quickstep. It's such like an old time deep cut. That's so great.
Yeah,
Where'd you learn it?
A good friend of mine that I used to play a lot of music with, Derek Smith, who's a really good multi-instrumentalist. You know, I don't expect you know who he is. He's just a dude who I worked with, but he was a really good musician and turned me on to a lot of good music. And that was one that I think we were riding around in his truck and came on his stereo and caught our ears, and we're like, we're gonna learn that one.
It's that beat part.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I love trying to teach it to people and watching their brains turn upside down. Which has happened to me on the other, so I know how they feel because I've been on the other side of that.
Because it's something about it, to me, I think feels very natural, but it's pretty crooked.
Yeah, and once you get it, it can't be any other way. No, I love that tune.
Okay, let me ask you a question. You got me talking for a while. You're ahead so far in the
all right, are we keeping score? Do we have a tally?
Only because I want to make sure that I get to ask you questions. Of the people you've interviewed, who was like the most like personally like, oh wow, this is a get for me. Like this is someone who I like love listening to, and is like a personal like goal to like what it would be cool someday to get this person on the show.
Oh yeah, awesome. I have a few ideas, but let me mentally go through my list just to make sure I'm not overlooking like a more obvious one. Right.
No, that's why I said like who's the biggest. Now I'm not saying who's the biggest get. I'm saying who's like for you that like wow, like this is someone I like was on my list of like someday, you know.
Right. Okay, so for at least 3 reasons, Alan Mundy.
Okay, I don't know Alan Mundy.
Alan Mundy, he's a legendary bluegrass player. He was featured in that Masters of the 5-String Banjo book, so he's been around a long time. He's played with a lot of really well-known bluegrass bands and has just influenced a couple generations now of players. How did you phrase it? Who was my biggest
personal get?
Okay,
like
so he was a huge influence on me when I started learning and start devouring all the music. He was definitely heavy rotation in my CD collection was some Alan Mundy records. So that meant a lot. He also was the first. He's one of my early episodes, like episode 4 or 6 or something like that. So it was also a huge deal to me because I felt like he really validated what I was doing, and he was going not that I look at this purely opportunistically, but in some way, the fact that Alan Mundy was on my show gave me a really nice feather in my cap going forward.
When you're asking people and be
exactly.
like, you could listen to an episode of the show. How about Alan Mundy?
If Alan Mundy did it, surely it's okay for you to do it because who are So that was a huge deal. And then my question to you about how to what degree you felt like an archivist. Alan is up there in age.
Yeah.
We don't have decades more of being able to hang out with him and listening to his music. So it was really meaningful for me to like have a little more of him on record and his voice telling his stories. And he has great stories and he's a great storyteller. So it turned out to be a great episode with someone who I respected, who I helped me in a lot of ways. So he comes to mind. Some other ones that come to mind, like Tony Trishka. I'm a huge fan of his. He was Bela Fleck's teacher for people who aren't familiar with him. So he hasn't had quite the acclaim as Bela, but for banjo circles, he's right in that category of like really trailblazing kind of dudes, and he's a big influence on me. Chris Pandolfi of the String Dusters. I've just been a personal fan of his music for a long time, so it was that one was really cool, and he's a really cerebral guy, so he's a fun one to pick his brain about. He's one of those people who no detail is too small. Like everything he does is thought out.
Yeah.
And it's fun to hear what the train of thought is behind some of the things he does.
Yeah.
So, in some way or another, I've enjoyed all of them, like seriously. But those are the ones that come to mind, especially Alan. He's one of those people that's just universally respected, universally liked, friendly dude. So, yeah.
That's so great that you were able to get him on so early.
And
that was very confirming for you. Yeah,
absolutely. That was a real sink or swim type of moment. Like if I sent out a lot of these invites to people like Alan Mundy, and they had started either turning me down or not responding, I probably would have just given up.
Yeah.
My first few episodes were with really good banjo players, but they were my friends. Yeah. So they probably felt a little obligated.
Sure.
And so that's fine. Sure. That gets me started.
Thanks, friends.
Little proof of concept maybe, but he was the first one that I had to really just come knocking on the door and seeing what would happen. And it worked out. So that gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And validation. Yeah.
Are there any aspirational future gets? Can we manifest this now on the podcast? Like, who do you want to get on the show? Who hasn't been on yet?
Oh, well, there are realistic ones and there are unrealistic ones. So among the realistic ones, Bela Fleck has not been on the show.
Yeah.
I'm actively trying toward that, and I'm cautiously confident that that'll happen eventually.
Yeah.
There are a few guys from the first generation, or maybe depending on where you draw the lines, like second generation of like bluegrass legends. Really, they're up there in age. People like Sonny Osborne and J.D. Crowe. They're like octogenarians.
Yeah,
they don't really leave their house as much. So, and they don't have anything to prove. They don't have anything to publicize. So in other words, they don't have much reason to just talk to this like Yankee kid who wants to come talk to them about bluegrass, and they don't leave their house. At least this is all secondhand.
Yeah.
This is what I've heard is the situation. So I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope that those will happen, but that would be really special. Those are the ones that come to mind. Some other ones I've tried a little bit for people like Rhiannon Giddens.
Yeah,
I would love someone like that.
Yeah.
And she has proven a little bit hard to reach.
She's a busy lady.
She's a busy lady, and she's really popular. And so the more popular someone is, the more barriers there are to access.
Yeah.
Someone like that would be great. Those are the ones that come to mind, I guess, for me.
Right on. Those ones. Yeah, I hope they get on your show. That would be great. I would love to listen to those interviews.
Call me Bela. Call me Rhiannon.
Should we play another tune?
Okay.
Yeah. Daily's real.
Right.
Okay.
2, 3. job.
Thanks. Trying my hardest. That's a tricky one.
B flat out of open tuning on a tune that you're not, well practiced on. So, no, that's impressive.
Well,
that's cool.
I love your banjo playing. I love your...
Really? Thanks.
Yeah,
I'm flattered. I love yours too.
I don't get to listen to Three Finger very often. It's a real treat. And you... it's one of those things that you were talking about. It's like, I don't know how to put my finger on all of what's going on, but it's a very particular tone on your banjo and in your technique, and I don't know exactly what it is. There's like a... like I was just listening to, is her name BB Bowness?
Yeah.
From Mile 12.
I love
and hers
BB.
is just like, it's like a coffee percolator. It's like, and it's like, and all of her ideas are like genius. But like the timbre is like just so soft and like little bubbles. And then others just like nasty. And I don't exactly know what it is that you're doing, but it feels really different from like the Poe Ramblin' Boys, like who I also heard this week,
Yeah, okay.
I think maybe you're doing some more like melodic shapes and stuff as opposed to just doing roll things, and you're using the rolls to fill in the spots.
Yeah.
Are you using those? Isn't there someone named Keith who does melodic things? Other than you, isn't there another Keith melodic banjo?
There's Bill Keith.
Bill Keith, that's what it is.
Who's a very, very much credited with popularizing and developing the melodic style. Which, when I say melodic style or Scruggs style, does that mean something to you?
Yeah, isn't the melodic style like something like if you wanted to play a major scale, you would go like it's super sweaty for me to do it. Yeah, sorry, I'm in a weird tuning, but something like that.
Right, exactly.
You're trying to get as many strings ringing at the same time as possible.
Exactly.
And then so you do these like wacky shapes.
Yeah.
With open strings.
Really wacky shapes, and it really hurts your brain.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any sense. Because typically, if you start on a note and then you want a higher pitch, you're either going to go up on the fret on that same string, or you're going to go up a string, right?
Right.
But in melodic style, often to get a higher pitch, you're going down a string.
That stresses me out.
And you already are dealing with a banjo that has the highest pitched string on what would on any other instrument be the bass section of the strings. So all of this combines for just some real mental frustration at first, but when you get good at it, you get like almost harp-like.
Yeah.
Didn't do that very well.
Wow.
Yeah. So where things can ring out.
Yeah.
And it's a much more fiddly type of approach, so it's good for playing fiddle tunes. That's usually where you hear that stuff, is for fiddle tune playing. And to address your other comment, someone like the Poe Ramblin' Boys. So my banjo is set up. The head is, I would not call it loose, but it's looser than someone like the Poe Ramblin' Boys would have, because they have this very bright, blistering kind of sound. Something like that, and I'm picking very close to the bridge, and it's a really common tool and effective strategy, especially for playing stuff like we've been playing, where I will pick much closer to the neck, and you can hear how the tone changes. It gets a lot mellower.
Yeah.
So for things, I dare say almost closer to like an open back.
Sure. Yeah.
Sound.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's where a lot of clawhammer players play.
Yeah, right. You have a scooped neck, and that's exactly why, because you get a more plunky effect out of it. So thanks. I'm a big fan of what you do. This is a real hoot to hear the twin banjo styles on some of these. It's
such a there's this like rhythmic game and tension between this kind of duet, and like just like hemiolas of like three-finger banjo playing, and then the boom chuck of
and
clawhammer, and then trying to make them like fit together. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's
and
hard.
If we had like maybe a couple more sessions or something, or run-throughs of these two, and I imagine we would both start to hear different things of how they can interconnect.
We could be the next Bela Fleck and Abigail Washburn, the next cross-genre power couple.
Mark it. Heard it here first.
This is normally the part in my show, like before the last tune, where I would say, like, where do you want people to go to follow, support what you do or keep track of what you do and all that stuff. Before we do that, is there anything else that like you need to like ask me in order for your show, like bullet points to be taken care of? Like,
I'm very unregimented. I mean, I do have a lot of recurring types of questions. That's just how it has evolved. It's not that I need to ask those questions. What I would most like to know, I'm looking at your picks that you have.
Yeah, we talked.
And I wanted to ask you about gear, or I mean, it's unusual. Clawhammerists, sometimes they'll use like a finger pick turned backwards or something like that. But you have, I don't know, tell us what you have.
So these are Sitar Mizrab.
Yeah.
They're the finger picks that sitar players use, I guess. Like, I haven't watched that much classical Indian music. Like, I don't know if I've ever actually seen a sitar played correctly up close, but basically, if I were to describe them, I think it's one piece of wire that is wrapped in such a way that there is there's a triangle that sort of follows the shape of your finger. Most people,
and it's perpendicular to your nail.
That's
sort of the key.
Yeah, most people when they try to put it on, they'll try to put it like parallel to the nail. Yeah, but it's perpendicular to the nail, and the idea is that you can go both directions and it'll have the same basic tone. And the reason I use these is because I use up picking in my clawhammer stroke without breaking the clawhammer motion. So like if you ever like watch a clawhammer player, it's hard to tell what they're doing because it's sort of a subtractive technique, more like chiseling away than it is like, like my impression is that most of the time when you're playing three finger, you move a finger when it's time to hit a string, and you don't move a finger when you don't want it to hit a string, right? Like maybe there's a little bit of like...
Are we talking right hand technique now?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Economy of motion is definitely a thing. Especially once you get into really speedy bluegrass playing, any wasted movements is just...
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Clawhammer is more like flat picking in that you, most of the time, are going bang, 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 bang. You're constantly doing this motion. And, just like with flat picking, when you don't want it to sound like this, you move your hand away, but you still move your hand.
Right.
So clawhammer is the same way. There's like four possible... sorry, I still am in this weird tuning. On my fifth string. So like, there's the... People sometimes refer to it as the bumpa ditty. You have in each old time beat, you can do two downstrokes, which means that you have to do an upstroke, and typically people will fill that upstroke space with a thumb. Either that's a thumb on the, or I'll do it on different notes so you can tell. So like that high note is my thumb. Right. You can do the thumb on the fifth string, or you can drop thumb to an inside string. Yeah. Or you can use a hammer-on or a pull-off in one of those spaces between your downstrokes. But your hand's always moving, right? Just like a flat picker typically would.
Yeah.
But there are some certain limitations to that. For instance, drop thumbing. It can be really useful melodically to catch descending lines in eighth notes, if you count the eighth note as the shortest or as the fastest note. Some people prefer to think of that as the 16th note. So like, you can do a line like that with a combination of drop thumbing and pull-offs. And obviously downstrokes. But what if you want to do that line in reverse?
Going up, ascending, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really difficult to drop thumb past the string that you just struck with your, let's say you're using your index finger for your downstrokes.
You're upside down at that point?
Exactly.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And because, climber doesn't have an anchor, like often I'll see bluegrass players, like anchor with their pinky. Usually the clawhammer technique, you anchor your thumb on the note that you're about to play, on the string you're about to play. So, if I do this kind of stroke, downstroke on first string, and then thumb on fifth string, at the bottom of my downstroke, my thumb is already resting on the fifth string, as opposed to in like your technique, you move it when you want it to hit, and but like
it's just different. Anchor points.
Exactly. And the anchor is constantly moving wherever your thumb is. That's sort of your main anchor, because it's constantly touching down. But you can't, if I wanted to go this note to this note, fourth string, pinky to third string open, I can't, I'm muting it if I'm putting my thumb past. And there are certain players who I think have adjusted their technique in such a way that they can just do that. Like I think Victor Furtado does that, where I don't think he anchors at all. I'm not sure. I still want to have him on the show. He was here this week, but he's too busy. So what I do instead, which I think is way easier than that, is I use my middle finger because it's right there. So if I want to do that line in reverse, I'll just do a drop thumb, but with my middle finger doing the upstroke. So, and I maintain the clawhammer stroke. The motion is intact. But I'm just pretending
that is
that
nuts.
Yeah, and I invented this, but other people have also invented it because it's an intuitive thing to do. You have that other finger, it's right there, it's ready to be put to work in those spots where you need to get in between your downstrokes a higher note, whether that's for a rhythmic or textural or melodic purpose. And so, I've been calling it pitchfork banjo, and I guess this is my one of my things that I want to promote is that I have an instructional series called pitchforkbanjo.com, and it's just like a $10 a month thing, or sign up for a year and at a discount, and I just do tutorials for old time festival jam tunes and some deeper cut stuff where in the advanced videos I will incorporate this technique. And the way this site's structured is like it'll be a tune tutorial, and then underneath it is a video for every single concept or exercise that you would need in order to play that arrangement of that tune. Yeah. So like if there's a tune that uses let's say the G major pentatonic scale in the 7th and 9th fret positions, then underneath that in the blog post it'll have a video of those scales, so you can practice it before you actually try to do it in the tune. But I use that technique. But other people have invented similar things, like Richie Stearns, who is a person maybe you should have on your show someday if he's down. I haven't had him on my show. I would love to. I think he's really cool. But he played for the Horseflies and plays with Richie and Rosie now. But he does index finger down up picking in a similar kind of way. Mostly on the first string, he'll go, kind of do that. But it sounds incredible somehow. I do a little bit of that mostly to grab, because it's hard to play. Sometimes up the neck, a hammer-on will get lost in the shuffle. If you do a little up pick after your downstroke, then you can give it a little oof, especially at a slower tempo. You can get a little more. Yeah. So these.
This would all be easier if you just switched to 3-finger. Right? You're allowed to use all the fingers.
Here's the thing, though. I'm definitely interested in doing that someday, maybe. But the thing that I like about clawhammer is the limitation of you don't have to make decisions, because it's just bang, 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 bang. That's all your right hand is doing. And if there's only like, a few ways to do, or probably only one way to do each kind of thing, each melodic idea. And you have the limitation of your hand going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And all I have to do is have the muscle memory set for, like, if I'm ascending, I'm either going to do a downstroke, or I'm going to do a hammer-on, or I'm going to do a pitchfork stroke. If I'm descending, I'm going to do a downstroke, a drop thumb, or pull-off.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, I'll do like a little index finger waggle to catch an extra note. But like, that's it. And those are the directions. And then anything past that is beyond muscle memory and are choices. But those are the choices that I'm making. But I like just having all those choices already made in my hands.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you discover that these sitar picks work well for this?
My friend Armand Ehrman, who's a luthier in Rhode Island and plays a lot of northeastern tunes and Celtic tunes, and recently he plays like clawhammer ukulele, and he uses one. And I was like, I should start doing that. So I ordered some and built up my calluses, and
They get a real nice clean sound.
Yeah, it required a little bit of adjustment for me because it's like metal on metal, and I have to pull back a little bit, but it's great because it's really loud. Yeah, which can be nice on like,
were you just fingernail before that, or did you?
I had long fingernails, that I would use, and I like these, and I get my fingers back, and I can, hold a baby or a lover, or cook food or play basketball, which is something I almost never do. But every once in a while, I want to do some sort of ball sport where I catch a ball and then I'll break a nail and have to put on a fake one. I don't have to do that anymore.
Disaster, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I got that from Armand Ehrman. I think other people do too. They're cool little picks.
Yeah.
You can go to raincitymusic.com. I think that's just like a local South Asian, like Seattle. I think they're in Seattle. They just sell instruments.
Asian musical supplies.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Specifically like South Asian stuff. So, yeah.
Cool.
Sitar stuff.
What haven't we talked about yet? Is there anything?
We talked about a ton of stuff. Let me just say, clawhammer, old time curious people. Check out pitchforkbanjo.com. Check out Get Up in the Cool for more of this kind of hang.
Yeah.
All time musicians and other stuff. And then Tall Poppy String Band album's dropping sometime next year, but I think there will be some pre-order Kickstarter-y stuff for like mixing and mastering and distribution that are happening soon, either before this is released or soon after, depending on when we decide to release it. And,
that'll be a discussion too.
Where do people go to keep up with everything you're up to?
The podcast site is just banjopodcast.com. You can listen to all the episodes there for free, and as you know, if your listeners are pretty established in the clawhammer lane, I've assured Cameron here that I am branching out to more and more clawhammer guests, but I encourage you to be open-minded and listen to the bluegrass ones too. I think they're all great. But that also has links to Patreon. That's how I get support from listeners. All the episodes are free, but that's the way to throw me a couple bucks for my troubles.
It takes a lot of work, doesn't it?
It takes a ton of work.
Yeah.
It's mostly a time investment.
Yeah.
There's of course expenses.
Get the gear, and you got to travel sometimes, or
and editing is no joke. Yeah, it's tough, and I love doing it, but it's a lot of time.
Yeah. That's what I always say on my show. I love doing this, but I couldn't unless people help me.
Oh, right.
So, totally. Thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, man, I really appreciate it. I'm so thrilled that we got to do it, especially because for how hectic this week can get, it's easy to just lose track of things that you do really want to do, but they just fall off the back burner. So I was thrilled to see that you were here, even if slightly unexpected. It was great.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my own presence here. It's been great, and it's good to actually meet you in person.
Yeah, same, likewise.
what should we do for a final tune?
Do we have one more?
Yeah.
Cool.
Road to Malvern. Shout out to Jim Childress.
Is that who wrote this?
That's who wrote this.
I'm glad you know.
I had him on the show.
I'm awful with this stuff.
Yeah, it's a modern tune, Jim Childress.
Okay.
This is his his hit single in the old time world.
Right.
He has other great tunes. People should go check those out.
Well, this is one that has crossed over to bluegrass.
I love it.
Just like who wrote James Bryan? Is that Farewell to Tryon?
I think it was Mac Blaylock's uncle who wrote it.
Okay.
And James Bryant got it from Mac Blaylock, I think.
Okay. I sure as heck don't know.
Yeah.
But you're good with this stuff.
Sometimes.
Okay.
I'm at least good at disseminating misinformation that I feel confident about.
Yeah, just say it.
Yeah.
Say it like you mean it. That's how I play banjo.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but mess up loudly. I can start this with some potatoes, I guess. What kind of speed you want to take this?
I can do this one fast.
A little bit faster?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Love chasing that melody around with you.
Right. No, and you dropped into harmonies.
Thanks again for listening to the Picky Fingers Banjo podcast, or were you listening to Get Up in the Cool podcast? It's all the same for this one, folks. Thank you once again to the Patreon supporter of this show. That's Samuel Barham. You can go to patreon.com/banjopodcast to become a supporter yourself of the show. And don't forget the special gifts. Join me for the all-invited VIP lounge Monday, December 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern, or go to banjopodcast.com and use the coupon code PICKY21 to get 21% off of your order now through the end of the year. And those are those super cool t-shirts that all the cool kids have, so don't miss out on your chance to do that. And I'll see you all very soon.